Hi there, I'm Marlene. My sister placed me near the restroom at her wedding, like I didn't matter, but when I realized it wasn't just a seating mistake, I exposed everything, in front of 200 people, the lies, the fake love, even our own mother's betrayal. Why would a family go that far to erase someone they claim to love? What time are you hearing this, and where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Have you ever been pushed aside like you didn't belong? Tell me below. I pulled into the valet circle, my 12-year-old Honda humming like it knew it didn't belong here. Outside, guests in silk gowns and tailored suits flowed through the glass doors of the grand venue like royalty arriving at court. I hesitated a beat, watching my own reflection in the windshield, lipstick too red, shoes too practical. But I'd come anyway, alone. Walking in, I tried to remember why. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was hope, some naive, clawing wish that this day might hold a moment of acknowledgement. A nod. A seat next to someone who remembered I was part of this family too. I was dressed for forgiveness, but my gut knew better. Name? The young woman at the entrance asked, eyes flicking from her clipboard to my thrifted clutch. Marlene Hayes, I said quietly. She squinted, flipped a few pages. You're at table 28. That's just through that side door, near the powder rooms. The side door. I blinked. Is there a mistake? She smiled, the polite kind that meant don't cause trouble. Nope, right here, table 28. I followed the hallway, past the golden chandeliers and champagne towers, to the dim outer corridor. Table 28 sat near the restrooms, next to a swinging kitchen door that coughed out bursts of clattering dishes and roasted garlic. The table itself was fine, linen napkins, a center floral piece wilting from neglect, but I was far enough from the ballroom I couldn't even hear the quartet inside. When I went to check the seating chart at the ballroom entrance, my name was nowhere in the center map. Co-workers of Ellis, Jolene's fiancé, had prime tables. Distant cousins I hadn't seen in years were beside the dance floor. Even Hannah, who once told me my laugh was annoying, had a seat next to the groom's brother. I stood there, still, trying to find meaning in it. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they just ran out of space. Maybe I saw them, my parents, beaming, sitting up front near the floral arch, holding court like nothing was fractured. My mother caught my gaze. She smiled that politician's smile she used when cameras were rolling, then looked away. I walked up to her. Mom, why am I seated outside the ballroom? She blinked like I'd asked her the weather. We had to prioritize immediate family, Marlene. You understand? Immediate family. My throat went dry. I'm your daughter. You're making a scene. And Jolene? She stood near the aisle, veil like a halo, watching. Her eyes locked on mine, and then she smirked, a soft, smug curl of her lip. She knew. Of course she knew. This wasn't random. This was intentional. I turned back, heart thudding, and made my way to table 28. I sat, hands in my lap, trying to breathe. Clank. The kitchen door hit the wall again. A server rushed past with stacked plates. Behind me, someone exited the bathroom, dabbing her lipstick. The scent of cleaning fluid lingered in the air. It pulled me back. 16 years ago, I'd helped set up Jolene's Sweet 16. Mom made me wear a t-shirt that said staff while Jolene got a crown. At Christmas, I cooked. She opened gifts. At Dad's retirement, I was asked to take photos, not be in them. I wasn't a guest. I was a fixture. It hit me harder now, surrounded by laughter I wasn't part of. Music I couldn't dance to, family who forgot how I bled for them. Maybe I'd always been seated just outside everything. Maybe that was the point. But I felt it then, sitting in the cold corridor with floral arrangements wilting like every part of me they'd overlooked. I wasn't going to swallow this. Not anymore. And that's when I knew. I didn't belong at that table. But I wouldn't stay silent either. The corridor was cold, colder than I remembered, and smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and dying lilies. I needed air, or quiet, or both. I stepped away from the dining table I hadn't touched, heels clicking against the tile, breath catching somewhere between fury and disbelief. just a few steps into the side hallway, and I felt like I'd peeled myself off a wall I never consented to be part of. Marlene! I turned. It was the planner, the young brunette in satin flats, cheeks flushed, voice sharp with panic. She skidded slightly as she caught up. "I just wanted to make sure you got to your seat all right," she said, tone coated with a sugary glaze that felt desperate. "I did," I replied flatly. She hesitated. Then she said it. "Yeah. Jolene signed off on all the tables herself, so, just wanted to double-check everything worked out the way she wanted." There it was. Not a mistake. Not a logistical mix-up. Jolene had seen my name, had chosen the seat outside the room, and had smiled while doing it. My face must have shifted because the planner's eyes widened. "Oh, I mean, of course she didn't mean it that way. She was so overwhelmed, I'm sure." She trailed off, realizing too late that I wasn't buying it. "Thanks," I said, turning my back before her excuses piled higher. So it was her, my own sister. I stood in the hallway, still. My fingers grazed the wall, textured like brittle bone beneath paint. Laughter from the ballroom rose and fell in waves, like the sea mocking me. I looked down the corridor, through the glass, and there she was, Jolene. Perfect posture, champagne flute in hand, tilted back with theatrical joy. She didn't look overwhelmed. She looked triumphant. My phone vibrated. A message from Kendra, one of Jolene's bridesmaids. I opened it. A screenshot. Group chat. Sister code red. "Jolene, just stick her near the damn restrooms. She doesn't matter." Another bridesmaid. Lamau Marlene, the toilet guest. A blur of reactions, emojis, laughing gifs. One even called me charity seating. My vision narrowed to the center of the screen. That line, "She doesn't matter." I didn't feel my knees go weak until I had to lean against the wall. The phone felt heavier than it should have. I reread the message, zoomed in. Kendra had meant to send it to another girl. Instead, she sent it to me. And now I couldn't unsee it. Every fake smile, every polite nod, every moment I'd tried to rationalize away, burned down by those 3 words. She doesn't matter. Suddenly, I remembered Jolene's graduation party. 16 years ago, I cleaned spilled punch while she took selfies with a tiara. Mom told me not to ruin her moment. "Just smile, Marlene." I did. Every flashback felt like glass catching light, sharp, glinting, mocking. I thought of the looks I got at dinner last Thanksgiving. Jolene announcing her engagement while I passed the cranberry sauce. No eye contact, no toast, no inclusion. I scrolled back up, watched the message again. Invisible one, charity invite, toilet guest. Somehow each word struck deeper than the last, because they hadn't just forgotten me, they remembered me, and laughed. I stood there for a long time, my hand gripping the phone so tight, my fingers ached. My breath came slow, controlled, like I was holding something down that wanted to erupt. "You think I don't matter, Jolene?" I whispered. "Then watch what happens when I finally do." The air outside was cooler than I expected, laced with honeysuckle and leftover smoke from the venue's fire pits. I needed to move, to step away from the velvet chairs and fake niceties. I wandered toward the edge of the garden, where the music faded into a distant thump and the laughter turned into background noise. My phone buzzed again. I hesitated. Then I looked. It was Amanda. We hadn't spoken since high school, but here she was, sending me something with a single line. "I thought you should see all of it." The attachment was long, a thread of messages, screenshots, conversations spanning months. I scrolled slowly at first, then faster as the bile rose in my throat. Has she gained weight again? Still teaching middle school? Yikes. Oh my God, put her near the bathroom. Her energy's like mildew. Jolene's name was on almost every message, and not once did she defend me. Number she let it. She's like a placeholder. Nobody would miss her. I sat down hard on a stone bench beneath an oak tree, the light above flickering like it was embarrassed to witness this too. The screen glowed in my hands like a damning document in a courtroom, Exhibit A of the truth I'd tried to ignore for years. They didn't just overlook me, they despised me. I stared blankly as the messages kept going. Photos from the bridal shower I was never invited to, captions mocking my outfits in old family pictures, even a comment from Jolene. You know she thought she was getting Mom's ring, right? Like I'd ever let that happen. Ring? A few seconds later, I heard a voice behind me. Oh my God, Jolene, that ring is stunning! It was one of her friends, shrill and enthusiastic. I turned my head slowly and saw Jolene holding out her hand. And there it was. That ring, oval sapphire in a sunburst of tiny diamonds, set in rose gold. My grandmother's. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. 16 years ago. I was 17, sitting on the edge of Mom's bed, her hands soft and cool as she slid the ring onto my finger. One day this will be yours, darling. You've always been the steady one. I remember the way the ring had fit, just loose enough to wiggle, just tight enough to feel real. I wore it once, and then it disappeared into her jewelry box. Years passed. I never saw it again. Until now. Jolene twisted her wrist so the stone caught the garden light, smiling like she'd earned it. Mom beamed beside her. I felt something snap. Not loudly, but definitively. They had erased me from the table, from the photos, and now, from the bloodline. I stood there for what felt like forever, clutching my phone like a lifeline. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't sad. Something else had taken root. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me small. They wanted me silent. They had taken everything. Now I take something back. This wasn't about the ring, not anymore. It wasn't even about that damn group chat. It was about years, decades, of swallowing hurt, of biting my tongue, of letting the golden girl shine while I dimmed myself out of loyalty. Not tonight, not again. They don't know it yet, but the real ceremony hasn't even started. I sat in the far corner of the reception lounge, surrounded by candlelight that didn't reach me. A thick floral arrangement blocked me from the rest of the guests, like even the decor knew I didn't belong. Jolene's laughter floated across the room, high and glassy. It bounced off the walls and pierced something in me I couldn't stitch back together. I pulled out my phone again, not to check messages, but just to have something to hold. That's when I saw the voicemail. It was from months ago, marked saved, though I had no memory of doing it. I tapped play. The first sound was my mother's voice, soft and syrupy. I'm just so proud of Jolene. She looked radiant at the shower. And the ring? Oh, it suits her so well. She's always been my shining girl. It was only right. The rest blurred. I stopped breathing. She'd meant to leave that message for someone else. Maybe one of her sisters. Definitely not me. Not once had she mentioned me. I had spent years telling myself Mom forgot things, that she just didn't show love easily. But she didn't forget. She just didn't include me. I closed my eyes, and the memory flickered to life without permission. 16 years ago. Mom sat at her dresser, brushing her hair. I hovered near the door with a report card in my hand. Straight A's. Again. I waited for her to ask, to notice, to say anything. She didn't. Instead, I heard her on the phone, her voice light. Marlene's doing okay. You know, just average. But Jolene, oh, that girl's got star quality. Back in the lounge, someone tapped their glass. I looked up. My mother stood in the center of the room, holding a microphone. I just want to say, she began, this day is more than a wedding. It's a celebration of who Jolene has always been. She scanned the crowd like she was savoring the spotlight, then raised her glass. Jolene has always been my pride, my only pride. People clapped, chairs scraped, glasses clinked. I didn't move. Something inside me went completely still, the applause muffled in my ears. I felt my wine glass trembling between my fingers, not from nerves, just muscle memory trying to act like I was still part of the room. But I wasn't. I was a spectator at my own family's performance. I was background. I was never meant to be anything but her shadow, I whispered under my breath. The weight of it all settled onto my chest like a boulder.
I wasn't angry anymore. I was erased. I stood up slowly, careful not to knock the table. No one noticed. Not one head turned. As I reached the hallway, the velvet drapes brushed my arm. I kept walking. If I can't belong in this family, I'll at least be the storm they never saw coming. Let them toast to Jolene's perfection. They're drinking to a lie.
The air outside the venue had turned heavy, pressing against my skin like a warning. I stood near the ivy-covered brick wall behind the reception hall, hidden from view, clenching the edge of my jacket like it could hold me together. I wasn't crying, not anymore. That part of me had gone quiet. I wasn't angry in the explosive, chest-burning way I'd once known. I was something colder, focused. I'm done playing the peacemaker. 2 weeks ago, while packing up some boxes from Mom's garage, I'd stumbled on something I hadn't meant to find. An old journal. Her handwriting. Slanted. Familiar. The cover smelled like dust and Chanel No. 5. I'd opened it thinking I'd find grocery lists or recipes, maybe a few old birthday notes. Instead, it was a ledger of every disappointment she'd ever associated with me. Marlene failed algebra. Marlene wears gray to a summer event. Why? Marlene lacks Jolene's presence. One page had Jolene's name circled in pink ink. Underneath, she gives me hope. I'd read it twice, then 3 times, like maybe I had misunderstood. I hadn't. The words bled through the page and into my bloodstream. I wasn't overlooked. I was documented, judged, dismissed, discarded. I'd kept the journal pages tucked into my purse, not sure why. But now, under the moonlight behind a wedding, I was never really invited to, I knew. They were my truth. Not to expose her, not yet. But to remind myself I hadn't imagined this neglect. It had been carved in her own words. I stepped back inside through the service entrance, moving along the narrow hallway behind the bridal suite. The scent of roses and expensive perfume lingered, and through a cracked door, I heard her voice. Jolene. Her tone was syrupy, but jagged underneath. Ellis will be mine the second that prenup clears, she said, laughing. I mean, let's be real. I don't need to love him. I just need the access. Another voice, one of her bridesmaids nervous, responded, Wait, are you serious? Not everything pretty is permanent, babe, Jolene purred. Let's just say I'm playing the long game. I didn't gasp. I didn't stumble. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Every second became evidence. Every word sharpened the edge I'd been quietly building. This wasn't just a betrayal of Ellis. It was validation that she believed she could manipulate anyone and come out clean, that her charm gave her immunity. But I'd been listening, watching, learning. She wasn't untouchable, not anymore. I left without a sound. The parking lot felt different now. Less like an escape, more like a battlefield. I sat behind the wheel of my car and let the silence stretch. She's not the only one with a plan now. The morning of Jolene's wedding ceremony should have felt like a funeral. Not because someone had died, but because I was finally burying the last version of myself that cared to be loved by them. I sat in the empty hotel corridor outside her bridal suite, back straight, fingers curled around the zipper of my purse. My breath was steady now, not shallow, not ragged, focused. This wasn't rage anymore. This was math, strategy, closure with bite. A week ago, I'd visited Jolene's apartment to return one of Mom's casserole dishes, an excuse to show up unannounced. She was in the shower. I waited, wandered, and there it was, a stack of legal paperwork on the kitchen counter. I recognized the title right away. Pre-marital financial agreement. She'd always been careless with her trophies. I remembered Ellis sharing a draft with me months earlier, asking if the clauses looked fair. At the time, I gave it a glance and nodded. Now I compared. Line by line. Something didn't add up. The new version was leaner, colder. Entire phrases had been rewritten. A clause about joint equity removed. Another about post-marital property shifted from mutual consent to subject to primary spouse discretion. Subtle, clever changes, and devastating. She hadn't just lied to him. She'd rewritten the contract of their future to suit her own exit plan. I scanned the papers, took photos, then quietly folded the originals and slipped copies into my purse. She never noticed. Maybe she was too busy practicing her bridal smile in the mirror. Now, standing outside the church's side entrance, I saw Ellis alone, tie half knotted, hand trembling slightly as he stared at the stained glass shadows cast on the carpeted floor. He didn't hear me approach. "Ellis," I said softly, holding out a thick manila envelope. "I don't want to make a scene. Just read this, then decide." He took it without speaking, opened it, saw the pages, the photos, the recordings. The audio started playing faintly from his phone. Jolene's voice. "Honestly, once we're married, Ellis will be mine, at least until I get what I need." Another clip, her laugh, her venom. "Not everything pretty is permanent, babe." Then Mom's journal pages, annotated with pink ink. The parts where Jolene was called Hope, and I was just plain tired. Ellis didn't sit. He didn't speak. His eyes went blank, then wet, then steel. He pressed his lips together. I trusted her. "You still can," I said, "but trust yourself more this time." He nodded once, like a soldier briefed before a war. He tucked the envelope inside his jacket, squared his shoulders, and walked toward the altar doors. And me? I stayed in the shadows. This wasn't my spotlight. Not yet. But whatever happens next, I'm not the one hiding anymore. The chapel shimmered with candlelight and curated perfection. Rows of ivory roses lined the aisle, and soft music trickled from the quartet in the loft above. Every seat was filled, faces turned expectantly toward the double doors. And then Jolene appeared. She floated in like the heroine of a romance novel, veil cascading behind her, lips curled in a smile rehearsed 1,000 times. Not a trace of guilt on her face, not a crack in the performance. I sat in the third row now, not near the restroom, not far enough to forget where I stood with all of them. My mother sat across the aisle next to Camilla, Ellis's mother, whispering as if nothing had shifted, as if everything hadn't. But Ellis, he looked different. His jaw tight, lips drawn into a line, eyes darting like he was weighing invisible scales. Jolene hadn't noticed, or maybe she thought she'd won already. Earlier that day, Ellis had tried. He showed Loretta the documents. He played the audio. Her response? "Don't embarrass us. Be a man. Do the right thing. The right thing. Always about appearances. Always about loyalty to the lie." Now at the altar, the minister asked the usual. "Do you, Jolene, take this man?" She said, "I do," like it was the end of a fairy tale. And then came Ellis's turn. Silence. A shift. "I can't," he said. Every breath in the room held. Somewhere, a guest dropped a program. Another gasped audibly. Jolene turned, wide-eyed. "What?" "I can't marry you," Ellis repeated, voice steady but cold, "because this marriage would be a lie." The microphone picked up every word, and no one stopped him. "You lied about the prenup. You lied about what this wedding was. You lied to me and to everyone here. You never loved me. You loved what I could give you." "No, no." Jolene grabbed his hand, gripping with fingers desperate and shaking. "You're confused. Whatever this is, we can talk." Camilla stood up from her seat. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Loretta hissed from her chair. "Ellis, don't make a scene." He looked at her for the first time, seeing the rot behind the glitter. "The scene already exists, Loretta. You just ignored the curtain call." Jolene's composure shattered. "You'll regret this," she spat through clenched teeth, mascara already streaking. "No," Ellis replied, stepping back from her. "I'm just done regretting you." The sound of phones buzzing and camera shutters clicking filled the space like a digital storm. Whispers morphed into murmurs, then open commentary. I watched it all unfold, frozen in my seat. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Instead, I felt something more honest, like watching a levee break after years of pressure. Terrible and necessary, ugly and purifying. Jolene was still gripping the bouquet when it slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a muted thud. And just like that, the lies unraveled faster than the bouquet hit the floor. For a second, the entire room held its breath. No clinking glasses, no whispers. Just the hollow space between what was expected and what had just happened. Jolene stood frozen at the altar, lips parted in disbelief, veil fluttering slightly from the air vent above. She looked around like someone expecting a cue, someone waiting for the spotlight to shift back in her favor. But there was no script for this. Loretta sat stiff in her seat, hands clenched so tightly in her lap I thought her pearl bracelet might snap. Even Camilla, poised and composed, had a glint in her eyes I hadn't seen before, like she'd known this day would come and was simply waiting her turn. Then came the buzz. It started from somewhere behind me. A phone. Then another. Then a whisper passed like a current. "It's online." Ellis's vow interruption. Someone had filmed it. Of course they had. In a room full of people dressed to impress, nobody ever puts their phone away. The clip was already spreading, first through the room, then beyond. I caught a glimpse on a guest's screen. Ellis's voice, low but firm, calling off the wedding. You could hear the stunned silence, the gasp, the disbelief. One line repeated as captions flooded in. "This wedding is off." Jolene's name began to echo in digital spaces before she could even get off the altar. Guests started refreshing their feeds. Some looked uncomfortable, others entertained. The atmosphere had shifted entirely, from shock to spectacle. My truth was no longer trapped in whispers, I thought. It was everywhere, and it had teeth. Then Camilla stood. Her heels clicked deliberately on the marble as she stepped forward, a manila folder in her hand like it was part of her evening clutch. She didn't rush. She didn't raise her voice. "You want to talk about lies?" she said calmly, addressing no one and everyone all at once. She opened the folder. What she held wasn't rumor, it was war. "There's more," Camilla continued. "More than the prenup. More than Ellis's integrity being tested. I had her investigated." Gasps rippled. Some guests sat forward. Others looked away. Camilla pulled out documents, bank transfers, text message transcripts, photos. She was planning to leave him once the assets shifted, she said, flipping to a highlighted printout. "Listen to this. Jolene to her boyfriend. Once the paperwork's locked, we cash out. Simple." "No, stop!" Jolene screamed, finally snapping out of her shock. She lunged forward, trying to grab the papers, but Camilla stepped back. "I'm not done," she said. Jolene turned to Loretta. "Do something." But Loretta was pale, quiet, and for once, not defending her favorite daughter. Camilla didn't stop. "Loretta, you knew. You allowed it, maybe even encouraged it, because a rich son-in-law could fix what your own pride never could." Loretta opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The crowd didn't just watch, they judged. A few guests started whispering louder now, no longer hiding their disgust. One woman near the aisle muttered, "This is disgusting." Another pulled her child closer. Jolene backed away, visibly shaking. The veil that once trailed behind her like a dream now dragged on the floor, tangled, dirty, her lipstick smeared, her voice cracking. "They're lying," she shouted. "They're jealous." Nobody responded. As she stumbled down the aisle, I watched a reporter lift a camera near the exit. Not a guest. Press. Someone had tipped them off. Or maybe the algorithm had. That was the thing about truth. It didn't need an invitation anymore. Just exposure. Camilla turned to the lens. "Tell them the truth always shows up," she said evenly, "even in a white dress." Jolene didn't make it to the door before someone snapped her photo, mid-tier, bouquet half-crushed in her fist. Every step she took echoed like a fall from grace. Guests parted, not in respect, but in recoil, and I just stood there, not proud, not broken, just finally still, as the storm I'd carried for years swept the room clean. The petals were still scattered across the floor when the last guest left. Some were stuck to the soles of shoes, others lay crushed into the carpet like faded intentions. The grand wedding hall, once pulsing with music and laughter, felt cavernous now. Too large, too bright. Jolene's dress hung from the coat rack, abandoned. A shattered glass near the punch bowl glinted in the late afternoon light. I stood by the door, clutching my purse. Not like I was running, but like I was holding the last piece of something I'd just buried. My feet ached, my throat was dry. But I didn't cry. Camilla found me by the entrance, calm as always. She didn't hug me. She didn't offer soft condolences. Instead, she handed me an envelope. "I thought you should see it," she said. "I've had it for weeks, but timing matters." Inside were printed reports, time-stamped photographs, call logs, and transcriptions. A private investigator had followed Jolene since the engagement. I skimmed through page after page, hotel receipts under fake names, texts dripping in disdain for Ellis's family, and messages to someone named Trent, who called her my real one. Camilla watched me process it in silence. "I knew," she said simply, "but I needed more than suspicion. You gave me the moment." The weight of the folder wasn't what sank into me. It was the clarity. This hadn't been a spiral of emotional missteps. It was architecture, a structure of deception built brick by brick. And I'd been standing in its shadow for years. I wasn't just a woman wronged at a wedding. I was a witness to a generational lie, and maybe, finally, a breaker of it. At home, I gathered a few things: the diary I had found in the attic, the voicemail saved from my mother, and the crumpled seating chart with my name near the restroom. I placed them carefully into a small wooden box. I didn't destroy them. I didn't burn the ring or shred the journal. I locked them away. Because this wasn't about vengeance anymore. This was about boundary, about leaving the weight somewhere else, so I could walk forward with just myself. That night, I wrote a letter, not to Jolene, not to my mother, to me. I am enough. I was always enough. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need anyone to kneel in regret. The healing wasn't theatrical. It was quiet, like a room finally cleared of smoke. The next morning, I stopped by the Goodwill on Westheimer. I dropped off the box, hands steady. But as I walked away, a photo slipped from the flap and fluttered to the ground. I picked it up. Me and Jolene, 10 years old, matching swimsuits, arms looped around each other like we didn't know one day we'd forget how. I stared at it for a moment. I didn't cry. I kept it. Later, as I passed a florist on my way home, I paused. There was a bouquet in the window, soft peonies, wild tulips, a splash of something blue. "Beautiful, right?" a woman beside me said. I nodded. Some stories need to end to begin better ones. As I walked away, I felt it. Not triumph, not sorrow, just a quiet steadiness. The photo stayed with me, not for her, but for the girl I used to be before she became the villain in my story. Looking back, I don't regret exposing the truth. Not because it was easy, but because staying silent would have meant betraying myself all over again. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Silence doesn't keep peace. It keeps people small. Families aren't built on obligation. They're built on mutual respect. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from the table where your worth isn't recognized. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? What would you have done in my shoes? If this story touched something deep inside you, let me know by commenting 1 below or telling me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, I'd still love to hear your thoughts. Let's talk about it, because stories like these belong to all of us. If this video made you feel something, anything, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next one. There's more truth to tell, and maybe, just maybe, it's yours.